The sheer catastrophe that is the environmental crisis in today's world cannot be understated. Our planet, our only world and home, is dying, and dying fast. It is a catastrophe just waiting to happen, and unless we work to overcome it today, then we will all face the consequences, which is the death of the planet as a whole. And it cannot be the effort of a few select people. However, it must be the collective effort of the entirety of the planet to overcome it. The United Nations does notice this, and just how crucial it is to tackle this catastrophe before it happens. And so, agreements and treaties have been made to ensure all countries of the world would work together to save all of us. The most significant and well-known of these is the Paris Agreement, which makes sure all the countries in the world is aware of climate change and set goals to reduce their carbon emissions. And so, on the surface, it seems all well and good, right? We now have a collective goal, and that is to reduce these carbon emissions, the main factor of global warming and climate change of the entire world. It's certainly better than nothing, but is it truly enough to save the world? And is it effective enough to reach these climate goals? The effectiveness of these policies is left to each country to make sure that they reach those goals. But that is where the problem lies. Will the policies that each country implements be enough? And are the people behind those policies who make those policies work are just politicians yearning for more votes, or people who actually recognize the importance of policies that they create? So within this debate, I would like to have two terms: environmental crisis and climate crisis. I will be using them interchangeably. So, a few definitions of the keywords and also explanation about the actors as well as the characterization of this motion. First of all, environmental policies, which are policies that seek to prevent climate change and aim to be eco-friendly. However, it is important to note, in order to actually make these policies effective, you must have sufficient knowledge on environmental issues, their causing factors, the process, as well as the effects of them. This is where the problem lies. And second, which are politicians. These politicians are people who are typically in charge of the government, which are the main drivers behind the environmental policies that are required for the success of those climate goals. But unfortunately, many of these politicians either could not care less about the environment or they don't know much about the climate crisis and its sheer urgency. What is most important for them is that they gain the support of the people and get votes, mostly by applying what the people want to become as policies. And then third of all is the technocrats, which are people who actually have sufficient knowledge of these environmental issues and the most effective way on how to tackle them, right? Not only scientific technocrats, but also industrial technocrats who understand how different industries work and how to make sure these policies are effectively applied to industries. And why industries are important in this debate is because they are where most carbon emissions come from. So for this debate, there are two types of technocrats. First of all, scientific technocrats, which refer to those who have expertise in climate studies, or environmentalists to be exact. And the second of all is industrial technocrats, refer to those who have expertise in any industry, particularly those who industries which have lots of carbon emissions, and they are those who understand how their industry works and what the goals of the industries are. So within the current status quo is that the current climate policies are not enough or ineffective, and this is because of the politicians. Because politicians are the ones who are creating them. They want to be seen as environmentalists to appeal to their voters, but in reality they could not care less. Such policies could be good but insufficient, like pushing for eco-friendly transport, such as electric vehicles, and making green spaces, but not tackling industrial carbon emissions. Or they could be making unrealistic and destructive policies that are completely ineffective or too harsh on industries. This is why technocrats who know what's important and what they need to do to achieve the success of the climate policy shall be the driving force and creators of such policies. So, two things we would like to prove in this debate. First of all, how technocrats making environmental policies is much more effective than if politicians who are the ones who are making them. And then second of all, how politicians making these environmental policies is much, much more harmful. Okay. Get into my arguments. First of all, note that the environmental crisis is not a simple thing. Reducing carbon emissions is not as easy as pulling a switch, and making policies that actually work and are effective is not an easy task. Tackling this crisis requires both scientific and technical knowledge, which technocrats have, and it requires different layers of the country to make sure it is an effective process. In order of importance, those layers are the government, the industries and corporations, and then the people. So it must be started with the government, who actually have the power to lead the country, including its industries and corporations, to achieve environmental success. It cannot be the other way around. The people are next to powerless in the eyes of these industries and corporations. So when the government creates these policies, it must be effective and possible for these industries so that the policies are successful. But as I said, this is not an easy task. Most politicians do not know how the policies they create affect the industries, so setting outrageous goals with no clear of action to actually be applicable to these industries. But industrial technocrats understand the inner workings of these industries. They know simply setting outrageous goals and calling it a day will do nothing but harm everyone in the process. First, the goals of the policies are unachieved. Second, the industries are harmed. And third, as the industries lose profit, the country loses its wealth too. Industrial technocrats, they know how to apply environmental policies in an effective way to make sure that these industries don't get harmed and the goals of these policies are actually achieved. It must be a delicate balance. And so not only industrial technocrats but also scientific technocrats, they are just as important. They can educate the government, the industries, and the people on the environmental crisis and also its importance. So in short, they act as advisors for the government and industries, and second, they act as environmentalist influencers for the people. Okay. My second argument, so understand that when politicians create policies, they keep in mind the voice of the people. Because what kind of politician would want to lose votes and power by making unpopular policies? But unfortunately, this is the only thing that most politicians care about. They simply feed the people what they want without caring what they actually feed, but acting as if it is what the people want. So it is like feeding drugs to the people. The people become unconscious of what they're being fed, but they couldn't care less as they're feeling high, oblivious to what it could lead to in the future. So sure, politicians want to keep their policies effective too in order to earn popularity in the long run. Yes, we agree with that. But for a problem as big and complicated as the climate crisis, it has to be an expert leading and driving these policies, actually writing these policies down on the paper. It cannot be simply an ordinary politician. Like, even if the technocrats use the politicians use these technocrats to advise them on these policies, in the end, it's still the politicians who write the ink on the paper of these policies. And even if these technocrats who become in the power are just as hungry for votes as politicians, at least in order to maintain their popularity, they must show their expertise in making these effective policies. Otherwise, they're no different than any other politician. In the end, it's much better to have the technocrats writing these policies down and making them actually work in comparison to ordinary politicians. We are very proud to propose. Thank you.